Listen, cat in the hat used to do smack. Now he does crack. He can't get back. Take it away, take it away, take it away. I'm talking about cat in the hat used to do smack. Now he does crack. He can't get back. Take it away, take it away, take it away. We talk about cat in the hat used to do smack. Now he does crack. He can't get back. Take it away, take it away, take it away.
Hello and welcome to Media Watch on Hunger and Poverty. I'm your host, Bill Schickler, and in this program we're going to try to bring the threads of several issues that we've discussed and explored in recent programs into focus. Some people may have thought that we've gotten a little far afield in our programming and strayed from the topic of hunger and poverty, but in reality, these issues directly impact the kind of resources that are available to fight hunger and poverty. We've pointed out time after time after time, as was pointed out in President Jimmy Carter's Commission on Hunger back in 1976, that the main factor lacking in attacking poverty and hunger is political will. We can do things about population control, we can do things about technology, and even at this late we can do things about climate, weather, funding, education. But the one main factor that is lacking, and when we have problems around the world, the factor that is lacking is the political will of the people to do something about this. And so the resources that we have available to attack this are always claimed to not be there. It's like minimum wage. Ever since they came up with the idea of minimum wage and President Roosevelt in the 30s, they said, oh, it's going to hurt jobs, we can't. It's never been that. That's never been the case. There may have been some peripheral problems, but they were always worked out, and the overall progress was forward on a massive scale. I think Senator Ted Kennedy pointed this out every time the tired old excuse about, oh, it's going to cost jobs got pulled out and shown not to be true. How many times can you tell a lie? I guess people just forget. Well, to focus in on a specific problem that has drawn worldwide attention is the conflict in the newest country in the world, South Sudan. South Sudan was a section of the former country of Sudan, which formerly had been the largest country in the continent of Africa, Sudan. Sudan, before it split, was about the size of the United States east of the Mississippi River, but containing only about 30 million people. The northern part of Sudan is part of the Sahara Desert and occupied mostly by Arab people speaking Arabic. The southern part, which is now the country of South Sudan, was nativist Africans following nativist culture and religions, and some Christian groups. The South has been dominated by two tribes, the Dinka and the Nuer, and they're the focal point of the conflict now. There had been conflict for centuries between these two tribal groups over grazing rights of their cattle. Both groups are nomadic people that graze their sheep and their cattle, and that's always, when they cross into each other's areas, that's always been, just like in Somalia, a cause of conflict, but never on a large scale like it is now. What has been added to the equation is oil. The actual oil fields that Sudan has been famous for, and which is exported through the country of Sudan to the north, is the oil fields are located in southern Sudan, sort of near the border of the two countries. And it's been postulated that the country of Sudan in the north has been feeding arms and money to the Nuer the minority tribe in the south in order to weaken the government of South Sudan and thus weaken their negotiating position about how much money they're going to charge to send oil from southern Sudan through Sudan north up to their port and out to the rest of the world, specifically China. I know this is from a personal level because the first 3 programs of Media Watch on Hunger and Poverty 20 years ago in 1994 were with a person by the name of Moses Akal. He is from the Nuer tribe. He brought us footage that he shot in southern Sudan when it was still part of Sudan, and they were in more than a quarter century of war. And we took this footage and were able to put it up on satellite due to our connections through World Food Program. And we took this footage and were able to put it up on satellite due to our connections through World Food Program and World Food Day. And as a result, we got large scale coverage in the Senate when before we had not gotten coverage at all. So Moses Akal's footage and having that up on the bird, so to speak, opened up the horrible conditions going on due to that conflict. It got the U.S. more engaged and pushed forward. We have a new country, but now they're the same issues of fighting over resources is what's tearing up the country. There is a solution, though. Another guest that we've had on this program, John Prendergast, that's John Prendergast, has started a group called the Enough Project. They have a white website called enoughproject.org. Sort of like enough is enough, you know. John used to be on the National Security Council, the NSC, under the Clinton administration. He originally started with a group called Bread for the World. And we've known John over the years. He's been on this program when he worked with NSC and in the State Department and in Bread for the World. So he has put together legislation that you can help promote, that is the South Sudan Peace and Stability legislation. And if you go to enoughproject.org, you'll see that legislation. And you'll find out how you can contact your representative and have them support this legislation. It also calls for President Obama to appoint a special representative to South Sudan, specifically to negotiate peace between these two warring tribes. It is a tribal conflict, but it's expanded beyond tribal concerns because of the presence of oil. And in so many developing countries, and even here in Washington, D.C., if you have valuable real estate, like Southwest Waterfront, near which I live, the giant elephants come in and they trample on the grass of us small people, and we pay the consequences. Well, that's to just let you know that there are these other factors that come up in the media. But you also should know that every day, 18,000 children every day pass away from preventable causes basically related to malnutrition. Over 2 million children still die from measles. Measles in the United States is starting to tick up, but even in the 50s, you get measles, you're sick a couple of days, and then you overcome and you're back within a week. In the developing world, because of malnutrition, children's immune systems are much, much weaker, and it causes 2 million deaths per year in the developing world. So even though we see these large-scale disasters happening, worldwide there's a much larger Holocaust going on. But actually we've been able to impact that. Back in the early 70s, late 60s, UNICEF and the United Nations Development Program estimated that 50,000 children were dying every day. And so we've been able to, through immunization programs, through child survival methods, through oral rehydration therapy, that's giving salt and sugar combinations to children, even with polluted water. Over 2 million children die from diarrhea. That's because so much, when they get sick, so many of their vital nutrients pass out of their system that they have nothing left and they perish. So these oral rehydration therapy tablets, just a way of combining salt and sugar, are able to stabilize them and save their lives. Very cheap thing. And this was something that was promoted by Results and Bread for the World, and through their advocacy, they were able to get funding. And so as a result, we brought the number of children being killed every day from 50,000 to 18,000. It's still a terrible figure, but we've more than cut that in half. And you, the public, and these advocacy groups are responsible for that. So even though it may seem that things are very dire, half. And you, the public, and these advocacy groups are responsible for that. So even though it may seem that things are very dire, you can see that citizens still have a large-scale impact here in the U.S. and in far places around the world, enough so that you can be proud of saying that you were part of saving more than 25,000 lives a day. Okay, we wanted to now talk about some of the issues, some of the causes of why we don't have enough resources. The Economic Policy Group, which is a think tank, usually in Washington, if you have a think tank, it's because a bunch of rich people want to have their right-wing views of saying get rid of minimum wage or get rid of unions. But some progressive forces and unions were able to finance an intellectual think tank called the Economic Policy Group. And they did a study in 2009, the most recent figures we have, and they found out that after taxes, not before taxes, but after taxes, the richest 15% of Americans, the top 15%, after they were taxed, controlled 85% of the United States' wealth. Okay, that might not sink in because it's a statistic. Some people say, you can make statistics say whatever you want. Well, this is a fundamental thing to realize. 15%, let's say it was 10%, that would be 1/10 of the population. So a little bit more than 1/10 of the U.S. population has close to 90% of the wealth after they paid their taxes. So when they talk about, well, we need tax reform or we need to get rid of these burdens, taxes, or we can't create jobs, they already control 85% of the wealth after the taxes. So what do they want to control? 95%? 100%? So that is a bogus argument. When you hear anything about tax reform, we need to cut taxes to stir business. No, these characters already control 85% of the wealth after taxes. So we need to make sure that the 320 million Americans in this country, who over 200 years of building up the infrastructure, putting sweat and risking their lives and all the things Americans have done to build this country, that 300 million people are not cut out and just given the scraps and crumbs and to fight over 15% of the wealth of the country. That's basic unfair, and that's why there's poverty and hunger in this country, and that's what we're going to address ourselves to change. Now, some other things that have come up, most notably the Tea Party. And some people say, well, that's a grassroots group, Tea Party, where did they They came up and it's just a bunch of businessmen and some right-wing crazies who say, well, we want to cut taxes completely. They say they want to get rid of Social Security. They say that we want to get rid of minimum wage. People not realize it. But a guy named Norm Ornstein, who is from the American Enterprise Institute, which is a far right-wing think tank, even he said that the Tea Party is about 85 members in the House of Representatives. They're the problem. They are the thing that's stopping progress in Congress. They are responsible for gridlock. This isn't coming from a Democrat. This isn't coming from Nancy Pelosi. This isn't coming from Harry Reid. This is coming from a conservative, far right-wing think tank who wrote a book about this saying, it's even worse than you think, he wrote last summer. Norm Ornstein from the American Enterprise Institute. And so where did this Tea Party come from? Well, they're financed by the Koch brothers, K-O-C-H. Sometimes people see that and say the Koch brother, what's pronounced Koch. Charles Koch and his brother, whose name escaped me right now, are the second and third richest people in the United States of America. Together, their money is based on oil, and they would benefit highly from the Keystone Pipeline. And John Henson, who used to head up NASA, says that if these tar pits are opened up in Canada, you can say goodbye to trying to stop global warming, because all that shale oil, which is going to release methane and everything else, that's going to make it impossible to stop global warming. But these Koch brothers, they have a big interest in that pipeline, which is going to ship oil, by the way, not to the U.S., but to outside the rest of the world. Unfortunately, our representatives in Louisiana, they say, oh, well, there's going to be jobs down in New Orleans because it's a port, that's what will come out. Unfortunately, you think that you just got Katrina overran New Orleans. You look at what happened in New York City. Hey, global warming is for real, guys. Putting that pipeline in is a disaster. Well, the Koch brothers have been financing the Tea Party. They also finance things called Americans for Prosperity, and a group called ALEC, American Legislative Executive Council. And these are all groups that call for the ending of minimum wage, the ending of Social Security. They've even put together a 1-minute video saying that United States citizens who get Social Security are part of the 1% of the world who gets any kind of retirement benefits. And so we shouldn't even be allowed to have Social Security because we're part of the 1% of the world. That's how sick these crazies are. They want to get rid of minimum wage. They want to get rid of anything public. They want to privatize the mail service. They want to privatize everything, basically. No public lands. Let Exxon run the EPA. They're just out of their minds. And they had made together $70 billion last year. And they've been putting just huge amounts of money into campaigns of these crazy right-wingers. And people who are sane, who say, no, we can't do that. Well, in primaries, they fund these wingnut crazies. And because they have so much money, they can put these commercials saying, yeah, let's get rid of minimum wage. Yeah, let's get rid of Social Security. And when people hear it 1,000 times, they think, well, maybe there's something wrong with Social Security. And it's just like hearing something over and over and over and over and over again. It's like mind control. Well, you may have noticed that we had a number of shows relating to mind control. Jesse Ventura went on this tack and made a lot of discoveries back in 2006, with the Discovery Channel. And I think you remember the Discovery Channel here in D.C. based. They had a terrorist, crazy Chinese person take hostages and hold the building hostage. Sometimes I wonder whether that was a shot across the bow to tell them to knock off stop talking about these things. And what he was talking about was a thing called HAARP, H-A-A-R-P. And in fact, he wrote a book called "You Don't Want to Play This HAARP." The person that wrote that was a guy named Nick Begich, who is the brother of the Senator Begich of Alaska. And the reason they know so much about this system is that it's based up in Alaska, and they have 5 sites, but Gakona is the main site where they have, and you can see in the graphics behind me, these displays of all these antennas, and they're able to bounce signals off the ionosphere, and ostensibly it was to use these to communicate with submarines over the curvature of the Earth down deep into the ocean, which they do. But then they found out in the mid-60s, in fact, that they could move high and low pressure systems around and do weather modification. And then they found that if they pinpoint and use enough, they can put up billions of electron volts, they can actually create earthquakes. And they create a small aurora borealis that appears, and there's been pictures of these in various places where earthquakes have happened. There's in fact been congressional testimony in the late 90s. You can go and Google HAARP, H-A-A-R-P / congressional testimony, and you find out not only has the United States been involved in this, but so has Russia, Japan, Australia, Israel, China. And I phoned up RT, which is Russia Today, and I wanted to ask a question about HAARP, and they have their own version, I think it's called Tesla, and they wouldn't allow a question on it, and I guess even the Russians are worried about this. Well, Jesse Ventura and Nick Begich in this program showed that not only can it create earthquakes and create weather, Jesse Ventura and Nick Begich in this program showed that not only can it create earthquakes and create weather, but it can also do large-scale mind control. And they had an interview between Bob Woodward, the guy who was one of the reporters of Watergate, Bob Woodward, and Andrea Mitchell, who was an anchor who's at the State Department for 20 years with NBC from the State Department, a conversation between them talking about how this new technology was used in Iraq instead of at the same time as a surge, and it was responsible for bringing down the violence in Iraq. And what it does is it bounces these waves off, and it comes down in an ELF, extremely low frequency range, and it can do large-scale mind control. It can either get people upset or it can pacify them. And 60 Minutes even did a piece on this. Well, they think now that the Arab Spring might have been the result of using this and getting everybody riled up, and even Ukraine. But the most pernicious part of this is that there may be a linkage between what the NSA is doing, knowing all our cell phones everywhere in the world, and being able to link this extremely low frequency technology together with this mind control technology. No one has talked about this. Edward Snowden, I don't think, even knows about this. But this is what I think is coming, and that's going to show up in NASA, NSA, and it's something we need to be concerned about. If you go to Congress and look up Senator Wyden from Oregon, or Barbara, or Dianne Feinstein from California, they're on the intelligence committees in the Senate. And if we can convince them to investigate HAARP, mind control, NSA connections with the HAARP project, then we might go a long way towards finding out why is the U.S. population accepting a black budget that takes money away from hunger and poverty projects, takes money away even from Defense Department projects, and creates all these conflicts worldwide. Martin Luther King pointed out that as long as the war in Vietnam was going on, the war on poverty would not be a success because all those resources that should have been devoted to ending poverty, just with the money in Afghanistan, we could have sent every person in the last 10 years of school age to college from what we spent on Afghanistan. So we're going to revisit these issues. And again, I'm Bill Schickler. It's Media Watch on hunger and poverty, and I'm going to see you again real soon.
My buddy, buddy, very fun, my buddy. Highland is a buddy, and Valley Breeze, my buddy. Oh yeah, oh yeah. 313 is a buddy, buddy. Hilltops a buddy, buddy. Lisa is my honey, Pam is my honey. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Sweet D is a honey, Cool is a buddy, buddy. Ray is a buddy, buddy. You are my buddy. Oh yeah. Honey, Lisa is a honey, Miss Anita is a honey,